Okay, this is a ultralight backpacking quilt construction. I want to show you how I put it together. It is a piece of flannel for the inside and 100% polyester suiting material for the outside. I laid on it, traced out the length I need, cut the shape, and then on the inside flannel piece I sewed these baffles. They were 3 inches high. The baffles are necessary to give you the loft for warmth. You can look that stuff up for yourself if you want to see why that's important. And then, of course, pin each of the baffles to the outer piece and sew them down. To make sure I got the lines right, I used some very faint chalk marks right here, just on either side, that are just reference lines so I know where to put the baffles on the outside piece. And then I will show you the rest as I move along. I've sewed all my baffles in, and now I have to sew the top. But on the bottom, you see I could do a typical sort of reversed stitch where you sew it inside out and then flip it over to create this nice finished edge. But on that end, I can't do that because of all the baffles sewn in. So I have to do what's called a top stitch. And to do that, for those of you who, like me, don't really know how to sew, what you do is you take the edge of your material, you fold it over like this, and then you fold over the bottom edge as well, and you bring them together like that. And then you pin it, and you stitch across the top. I'm going to have to do that all the way across this top edge and then down one side. And this top section, the gray section, is larger because I want it to loft up. I don't want it to be pressed down flat. So you'll see how that comes together here in a second. Okay, so I got it all pinned up. It took a lot of pins just because I went very close together. As my wife likes to say, pins are your friends when you're sewing, so I used a bunch. You can see it's starting to kind of stand up now, so you get the idea of why I left the top piece a little bit bigger. Now, if you don't have a bunch of these pins, I suggest you go get some because it makes it a whole lot easier. They're not that expensive. I'm sewing this with a sewing machine, but you don't have to. If you don't have a sewing machine, you could sew this all by hand, in which case you wouldn't need as many pins because then you can kind of do it slower and kind of hold it together as you go. But even then, the pins would be helpful. The hardest thing here is making sure that you have enough material folded in from both sides so that you can actually catch it. Because if you get a little short, it's going to peel back out. The stitch will stay together, but you'll have a raw edge out, and that's going to fray. So you got to make sure that you keep that together. There it is with 3 of the sides sewed up. I just went down my edge here. It's a very forgiving technique. If you're not perfect, it doesn't matter because it's all going to be stuffed and kind of wrinkly anyway. So if your lines aren't perfectly straight, and anywhere that I happen to miss a little of the edge just because I got off on my line, I just went back and sewed a second line. You just double it up. See, you can maybe see that right here. Yeah, see, there's where I put in a double line just because it got a little off. So not a big deal. Now on the other side, here's the open edge, and you can see that there's the baffles, so it forms these sort of compartments. This section right here doesn't have a baffle because this is my foot box. And as with most of my videos, I'm not going to spoon feed you everything. You can go look up some stuff on the internet. I don't want to repeat what's done elsewhere. So if you don't understand what some of that means, go look it up. But now I'm going to stuff it. And here's where I'm making a modification. I am going to stuff it with plastic bags. These have been used as an insulation technique by lots of different people, lots of different circumstances. So I'm going to give it a try in here, and we'll see how it goes. Could turn out to be a total disaster, but you know what? They're cheap, free, basically. So I want to see if I can make it work. here is the quilt with two sides sewn and stuffed. Now before I sewed this final side, I did a little experimentation. It is stuffed entirely with plastic bags, as you can see right here. And when I had stuffed it very full, you know, it was nice and thick, but it was also very heavy. It came in at about 7 pounds, which was too much. So I took it back out to get it down to 4 pounds, and I wanted to see if that's warm enough, so I just safety pinned this one side to let me use it, and then slept outside with it a couple of nights, tried it, and it seems to be plenty warm enough. So now I'm going to go ahead and sew the other side. So I'm in the process of pinning it down. Just like we said before, I'm doing this top stitch kind of thing where you fold both edges in, pin it, and then sew straight across. If you need to do 2 lines, you can. And then once I'm done with that, I'll fold this foot piece up and sew that down, and I'll show you what that looks like as well. Here it is, completed. I sewed down the side, and then on this edge, instead of top stitching it, I did the usual sort of reverse stitch where you put the 2 pieces together the wrong way. I don't know if you can see that very well. Yeah, like that. The 2 pieces the wrong way, and then sew it, and then flip it. And so it gives you this nice finished edge here, like that. And then down here at the foot, to make sure that I kept room for my feet, I just sort of turned it into like a T. So you can kind of see here, it's a little messy here. This T hasn't been fully flipped out yet, but there you go. You can get the idea of the foot box. So this is where your legs go, under here, and then the head up there. Total weight 4 pounds, and I slept in it in under 40 degrees Fahrenheit, around 8 degrees, and it was perfectly warm. So a couple of things to note. Where it was a little cool was where any of this wouldn't tuck under me quite well. So right here in the hip area, even though it worked fine when I laid on it flat, when I rolled onto my side, it wasn't quite wide enough, just because when I measured I didn't give enough account for the loss of area with the loft. But otherwise it worked pretty well. There's still enough that I can tuck it under there, but I would have made that maybe you know, a couple of centimeters wider on each side, just to make sure I could tuck it under really well. So there you go. Very cheap, stuffed with plastic bags, and hopefully you can make one just like this and enjoy it yourself.